the National Treasury is looking to remove the 9 trillion shilling debt ceiling put in place to stem the country's borrowing and instead proposing to put what they call a debt anchor, which will be set at 55% of the country's gross domestic product.
The move by the Treasury comes at a time when the deficit in the budget policy statement exceeds the 400 billion Kenya shillings headroom to the 9 trillion Kenya shillings, with a deficit of 840 billion shillings in the 2022-2023 financial year budget.
In its endeavour to fully fund the country's biggest budget, the National Treasury is looking to lift the 9 trillion shilling debt ceiling set to contain the country's debt. To do this, the National Treasury is looking to amend the Public Finance Management Act, removing the debt ceiling and putting in place what it calls a debt anchor, which will be 55% of the GDP. However, the proposed law presents a problem as the country's debt has already surpassed 55% of the GDP. The move by the National Treasury comes at a time when the country's debt is just 400 billion shillings shy from the limit, with the 2022-2023 budget deficit being more than 840 billion shillings. If the law is passed by Parliament, this will allow the government to borrow almost $500 billion shillings to fund this year's budget.
Parliament of Kenya. It is a joint sitting of the National Assembly.
However, observers are warning against the rampant government borrowing, stating that this presents the government with numerous risks.
Let's live within our means. That's what I would say. What is it that our revenue can support, and how much debt can we continue accumulating without hurting other sectors of the economy? That is the budget that we should implement.
Further, Nyangi says that the country's debt levels have risen to alarming levels, putting Kenya at a high risk of defaulting on its loans.
Number one, there must be amendment of PFM Act and the regulations to ensure that now the ceiling of 9 trillion is vacated to create more space to borrow more. Number two, that means there will be more debt. And now that Kenya is at high risk of debt distress, what does more debt mean? Then it means that it nears the debt distress level.
The National Treasury has prepared a 3.32 trillion shilling budget for the financial year 2022-2023, with many critics, including the Budget and Appropriations Committee, raising concerns with the budget and how it will be funded. The proposed amendments to law are now subject to public participation. Members of the public have until 15th of March 2022 to submit their views to the National Treasury. Faisal Ahmed, Citizen TV, Nairobi.